The massive alien ship, Void Dominion, floated silently through space, its hull stretching for miles in every direction. Inside the command center, Fleet Commander Veltar stood with his arms crossed, staring at a glowing blue dot on the holographic display in front of him. That tiny dot was Earth, and it was about to become their next target. The bridge buzzed with activity as officers from 12 different alien species worked at their stations. Some had scales that shimmered under the artificial lights. Others had multiple arms that moved with precise coordination, and a few possessed eyes that could see colors humans couldn't even imagine. Despite their differences, they all shared one thing in common. They were part of the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Target acquired, sir," announced Lieutenant Zixara, her voice echoing through the translator device attached to her throat. The third planet from their local star, population approximately 8 billion primitive life forms. Veltar nodded slowly. He had done this 47 times before, and each conquest had followed the same pattern. First, they would observe the target world from a safe distance, studying their technology and military capabilities. Then they would evaluate whether the species posed any potential threat to the hegemony. Finally, they would overwhelm them with superior firepower and add another world to their ever-expanding empire. "What's their technological level?" Veltar asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Basic nuclear fission, Commander," replied Science Officer Thexel, adjusting his four-eyed viewing apparatus. "They've managed some crude space travel, but nothing that extends beyond their immediate solar system. Their most advanced weapons are primitive compared to our standard defensive systems." A few officers chuckled at this assessment. The hegemony had been conquering worlds for thousands of years, and Earth appeared to be just another easy victory. Their combined fleet of 50,000 ships could reduce the planet to ash within hours if necessary. "Any signs of unified planetary defense?" Veltar continued his routine questions. "Negative, sir. The species appears to be divided into multiple competing factions. They actually wage war against each other regularly, which has kept their technological development fragmented and inefficient." This was even better news. Divided species were always easier to conquer. The hegemony had learned long ago that unity was strength, which was why their 12-member species had formed an unbreakable alliance. These humans, constantly fighting among themselves, would never be able to mount an effective resistance. "Estimated time for complete planetary submission?" Veltar asked. 72 hours maximum, sir. Probably less if they surrender after." The initial demonstration of our capabilities, Veltar allowed himself a small smile. Another quick victory to add to his record. The Council of 12 would be pleased, and his reputation as the hegemony's most successful commander would remain intact. "Very well. Begin jump sequence preparation. We'll enter their solar system at the edge of their detection range and proceed with standard conquest protocol." The bridge erupted into coordinated activity as thousands of crew members across the massive fleet began preparing for faster-than-light travel. Energy cores hummed to life, navigation systems calculated precise coordinates, and weapons arrays powered up for the coming battle. But just as the final preparations were being completed, Communications Officer Rixa raised her scaled hand to get Veltar's attention. "Sir, I'm detecting an unusual transmission from the target world." Veltar barely glanced in her direction. "Ignore it. Primitive species always start broadcasting random signals when their crude sensors detect our approach. Probably some kind of desperate plea for mercy." "Actually, sir," Rixa continued, her voice carrying a note of confusion, "this transmission doesn't match that pattern. It's not directed at us specifically, and it doesn't appear to be a distress call." "Then what is it?" Rixa hesitated for a moment, checking her readings again. "It appears to be a mathematical equation, sir. Something about quantum field theory." Several officers exchanged glances. Mathematical transmissions were unusual, but not entirely unprecedented. Some species tried to prove their intelligence by broadcasting complex calculations, hoping to avoid destruction, by demonstrating their potential value as slaves or research subjects. "Let me hear it," Veltar said with a sigh. The bridge speakers crackled to life and a casual human voice filled the command center. The translation systems worked quickly to convert the alien language into something the crew could understand. "Hey, "Their universe," the voice said with an almost bored tone. "This is Kim Ji-ho broadcasting from Seoul. I've been working late in my lab again, trying to solve some problems with unified field harmonics. I think I might have cracked something interesting during my coffee break tonight. The trick is treating space-time like a musical instrument, rather than a mathematical constant. If anyone out there is working on similar problems, I'd love to compare notes." The bridge fell completely silent. Science Officer Thexel's four eyes widened in disbelief as he frantically began running calculations on his workstation. "Sir," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "the equations this human just casually mentioned, they represent some of our most closely guarded scientific secrets, knowledge that took our combined civilizations over 10,000 years to develop." Veltar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries, genuine uncertainty. He stared at the innocent blue dot on his display screen, suddenly wondering if they had severely underestimated what they were about to encounter. The silence on the bridge stretched for what felt like hours, though only seconds had passed. Fleet. Commander Veltar stared at the communication console, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. A human scientist had casually solved mathematical problems that the greatest minds in the hegemony had spent millennia working on. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The transmission repeated, and this time every officer on the bridge listened with complete attention. Kim Ji-ho's voice sounded relaxed, almost sleepy, as if he was just having a casual conversation with a friend, rather than broadcasting revolutionary scientific discoveries into space. "Science Officer." Thexel's hands trembled as he worked frantically at his console, cross-referencing the human's equations with the hegemony's most classified research databases. His four eyes darted back and forth across multiple screens, each showing calculations. That should have been impossible for any primitive species to comprehend. "Commander," Thexel said, his voice cracking with disbelief, "this human has just solved the unified field equation that our top scientists have been working on for over 3,000 years. And he did it during what he calls a coffee break." Communications Officer Rixa suddenly straightened in her chair, her scaled fingers dancing across her control panel. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple additional transmissions from the planet's surface. They're coming from different locations across their world." "Put them through," Veltar commanded, though part of him was afraid of what he might hear next. A new voice filled the bridge, this one belonging to a young woman speaking from what appeared to be a university in a city called Busan. "Hi everyone, this is Park Sunmi. I just finished my graduate thesis on matter transmission theory, and I wanted to share my findings with the scientific community. I know it sounds crazy, but I think I've figured out how to teleport objects across vast distances using quantum entanglement principles." Before anyone could fully process this revelation, another transmission began playing. This one came from a teenager named Lee Minho, who was excitedly explaining a computer program he had written for what he called a video game mod. The casual way he described dimensional folding techniques made several hegemony engineers drop their tools in shock. "This is impossible," muttered Chief Engineer Krontex, a being whose species had invented faster-than-light travel 5,000 years ago. "These calculations should be beyond any species at their technological level. How are they doing this?" Veltar ordered a complete scan of Earth's information networks, something the hegemony rarely bothered with when dealing with primitive worlds. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about human civilization. The scan revealed a planet where knowledge flowed freely between individuals, like water flowing downhill. Humans shared their discoveries openly through something they called the Internet, a global communication network that connected billions of minds across their world. Scientists in one location would publish their research, and within hours, other scientists thousands of miles away would build upon those ideas, creating an endless cycle of collaborative innovation. "Look at this," Thexel said, his voice filled with amazement. "A professor named Yoon Hyeri just published a paper about theoretical xenobiology. She's making predictions about alien psychology and behavior patterns that are disturbingly accurate." On the main screen, Veltar watched as human after human shared breakthrough discoveries with anyone who cared to listen. A medical researcher in Tokyo had developed a new treatment for genetic diseases. An engineer in Lagos had designed a more efficient solar energy system. A physicist in Stockholm had published equations that could revolutionize space travel. But what truly shocked the hegemony officers was how freely this knowledge was shared. There were no military classifications, no species-based restrictions, no government controls. Humans simply gave away their most valuable discoveries to anyone who wanted them. "Sir," Rixa announced, "I'm detecting another personal transmission. This one is unusual." A young woman's voice filled the bridge, speaking from what appeared to be a small bedroom decorated with colorful artwork. "Hello out there. My name is Choi Nari, and I'm an art student here in Seoul. I know this might sound weird, but I've been having these strange dreams about beings from other worlds. I keep drawing these pictures of what I think aliens might look like." The transmission continued as Choi Nari held up sketches that made several hegemony officers gasp in recognition. Her artwork bore striking resemblances to actual alien species, including some that Earth had never encountered. "I don't know why," she continued cheerfully, "but I have this feeling that someone might be listening. If you are out there and if you're thinking about visiting our little planet, I hope you come in peace. We have so much we could learn from each other." Veltar felt something he had never experienced in his centuries of military service: doubt about the righteousness of conquest. These humans weren't just intelligent, they were collaborative, curious, and surprisingly insightful about the nature of the universe around them. "Commander," Lieutenant Zixara said quietly, "what are your orders? Do we proceed with the invasion?" For the first time in 47 conquests, Fleet Commander Veltar didn't have an immediate answer. He stared at the blue planet on his screen, wondering if they were approaching victims or teachers. For 3 days, the massive hegemony fleet hung motionless at the edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Veltar had never hesitated this, long before an invasion, but the constant stream of transmissions from the small blue planet had shaken him to his core. Every hour brought new revelations about human capabilities that defied everything the hegemony thought they knew about primitive species. The latest transmission had come from Dr. Kim Ji-ho again, the same scientist whose casual coffee break discovery had first caught their attention. This time his message was different. Instead of broadcasting random theories into space, he was speaking directly to them. "I know you're out there," Ji-ho had said, his voice calm and confident. "I've been tracking quantum resonance patterns from your ships for the past few days. Fascinating propulsion systems, by the way. I think I can see some inefficiencies in your energy distribution that we might be able to help you fix. Science." Officer Thexel had gone pale when he heard this. The human had not only detected their presence from an impossible distance, but he had also analyzed their most advanced technology and found ways to improve it. Technologies that the hegemony had spent thousands of years perfecting. "How is he doing this?" Veltar demanded, pacing back and forth across the bridge. "Our ships are equipped with the most advanced cloaking systems in the galaxy. No primitive species should be able to detect us, let alone analyze our technology." "Sir," Communications Officer Rixa reported, "I'm receiving multiple transmissions from their educational institutions. It appears to be some kind of regular academic broadcasting." The main screen flickered to life, showing a middle-aged woman standing in front of a classroom filled with young humans. Professor Yoon Hyeri was teaching what appeared to be a routine university lecture, but her subject matter made several hegemony officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Today we're discussing theoretical xenobiology," she explained to her students with a warm smile. "If we ever encounter alien civilizations, we need to understand how different species might organize themselves socially and politically." What followed was a detailed analysis of alien psychology that was disturbingly accurate. Professor Yoon described hierarchical military structures, resource-based conflicts between species, and the psychological patterns that drove interstellar conquest. She spoke about these concepts as if they were obvious truths, casually predicting behaviors that perfectly matched hegemony operations. Most advanced alien civilizations would likely operate under strict hierarchical control, she continued, gesturing to diagrams on her classroom wall. They would probably view cooperation as weakness and see resource acquisition as the primary Driver of expansion. Such species would find it difficult to understand cultures that prioritize knowledge sharing over territorial control. Several hegemony officers exchanged nervous glances. The human professor was describing their entire civilization with uncomfortable precision, but the revelations didn't stop there. Throughout the day, more transmissions poured in from across Earth's surface. A group of teenagers in Mumbai had built a working fusion reactor in their school's science lab using materials they had ordered online. A retired engineer in Cairo had designed a new type of spacecraft engine that could theoretically travel faster than light, and he had posted the complete blueprints on the internet for anyone to download and use. Most shocking of all was a transmission from a young woman named Oh Min-jung, who appeared to be working late in a small apartment laboratory. She was speaking to herself as she worked, but her words sent chills through every hegemony officer who heard them. "If these quantum readings are correct," she muttered while adjusting some kind of homemade detection equipment, "there should be approximately 50,000 ships holding position just outside our solar system. The energy signatures suggest multiple species working together, probably some kind of military alliance." Chief Engineer Krontex dropped his tools with a loud clatter. "Sir, she just accurately described our entire fleet composition. How could she possibly know those details?" The answer became clear as they continued monitoring Earth's communications. Humans weren't just intelligent, they were intuitively brilliant in ways that defied conventional understanding. They made logical leaps that should have been impossible, connected patterns that other species couldn't see, and solved problems through creative thinking rather than pure computational power. A new transmission caught their attention, this one from a teenager named Kang Jae-min, who was sitting in his bedroom, casually streaming what he called a video game session to thousands of viewers around the world. But the game he was playing wasn't actually a game at all. It was a complex simulation of interstellar warfare that perfectly predicted hegemony battle tactics. "The key to defeating a technologically superior enemy," Jae-min explained to his online audience, while manipulating the simulation, "is to make them question whether victory is worth the cost. Most aggressive species have never encountered genuine cooperation, so they don't know how to respond to it." As if on cue, another transmission began broadcasting from a small coffee shop in Seoul. A young woman named Lee So-young was having a casual conversation with friends, but her words carried implications that made Veltar's blood run cold. "I've been thinking about those ships everyone's talking about," she said while sipping her coffee. "If they really are out there, they're probably scared. Think about it. You don't travel across the galaxy with that many weapons unless you're afraid of something. Maybe what they need isn't conquest, but friendship." The bridge fell silent as her words sank in. In all his centuries of military service, Veltar had never considered that his overwhelming display of force might be interpreted as fear rather than strength. "Sir," Lieutenant Zixara said quietly, "new transmission incoming. It's addressed to you personally." The screen flickered, showing a young man named Park Tae-woo sitting in what appeared to be a university library. He looked directly into the camera with calm, intelligent eyes. "Commander Veltar," he said, somehow knowing the exact name and rank of their fleet leader. "I'm a philosophy student and I've been thinking about your situation. Leading a fleet this size across the galaxy must be incredibly difficult. The responsibility for so many lives, the pressure to succeed, the weight of representing multiple species. I can't imagine how isolating that must feel." For the first time in 1,000 years, someone had addressed Veltar not as a conqueror or an enemy, but as a person carrying an enormous burden. "If you want to talk," Tae-woo continued with a gentle smile, "I'll be here. No pressure, no conditions. Sometimes it helps to have someone listen." Fleet Commander Veltar stared at the screen long after the transmission ended, realizing that everything he thought he knew about conquest and power had just been turned upside down by a college student's simple offer of friendship. The emergency. Council session aboard the Void Dominion had been going on for 6 straight hours and tempers were running high. Representatives from all 12 hegemony species crowded around the massive circular table, their voices rising in heated debate. Some spoke through translator devices, others communicated through color changes in their skin, and a few used complex hand gestures that conveyed emotions no human language could express. Fleet Commander Veltar sat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of the most difficult decision in hegemony history pressing down on his shoulders. The holographic display in the center showed Earth rotating slowly, looking peaceful and innocent despite the chaos it had caused in their carefully ordered universe. "This is madness!" roared War Prime Klondar, his massive frame shaking with anger. "We have conquered 47 worlds using proven methods. These humans may be clever, but they are still primitive. One demonstration of our firepower will bring them to their knees just like all the others." Several species nodded in agreement. The hegemony had built its empire on the principle of overwhelming force, and changing that strategy now seemed like admitting weakness. But Science Commander Thexel leaned forward, his four eyes gleaming with excitement. "You're not seeing the bigger picture, Klondar. These humans aren't just clever, they're revolutionary. In 3 days, they've shared more breakthrough technologies with us than we've discovered in the past century. Look at these energy conversion formulas they broadcast this morning. They could solve our fuel shortage problems within a year." "Exactly my point," Klondar shot back. "They're too dangerous to leave unchecked. A species this advanced could threaten the entire hegemony if they develop military applications for their technology." Veltar listened to the arguments swirling around him, but his attention kept returning to the latest transmission from Earth. Dr. Kim Jiho had sent another message, this one accompanied by detailed technical specifications that had left their engineering teams speechless. "Commander Veltar," Jiho's recorded voice played from the speakers, "I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. I've been working on some improvements to faster-than-light propulsion systems, and I thought your fleet might benefit from them. The modifications should increase your fuel efficiency by about 40% while reducing engine stress. Consider it a welcome gift from one explorer to another." The casual generosity of the gesture still amazed Veltar. Jiho had analyzed their most advanced technology, found ways to improve it, and then freely shared those improvements without asking for anything in return. In 47 conquests, no species had ever offered to help their conquerors. "Sir," Communications Officer Rixa interrupted the debate, "we're receiving multiple personal messages from the human population. They appear to be individual citizens reaching out to specific crew members." The council chamber fell silent as examples began playing on the screens around the room. A young woman named Han So-min had sent a message to their medical officer, sharing research about a new treatment for a disease that affected his species. A teacher called Lim Junho had recorded a video for their cultural affairs coordinator, explaining human educational methods that might help other species learn more effectively. Most surprising was a message from a group of children at a school in Daegu. They had drawn pictures of what they imagined aliens might look like, and their artwork showed creatures from different species living together peacefully, sharing meals and playing games. The children had labeled their drawings with hopeful messages like "future friends from space" and "let's learn together." "They're not afraid of us," whispered cultural analyst Morzen, her tentacles trembling with emotion. 47 species have begged for mercy or threatened retaliation when they detected our approach. These humans are inviting us to be friends. The debate resumed with even more intensity. Some argued that human friendliness was a trap, a clever psychological strategy to lower their guard. Others insisted that the humans were genuinely offering cooperation that could benefit everyone. Then a new transmission began playing, one that made the entire council chamber fall silent. The message came from a young man named Park Sung-jun, speaking from what appeared to be a small apartment in Seoul. "I know you're having a difficult decision to make," he said, looking directly into the camera with calm, understanding eyes. 47 worlds is a lot of responsibility to carry. All those civilizations depending on you to make the right choices. All those lives in your hands. It must be incredibly lonely being the one who has to decide between war and peace. Sung-jun paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I'm studying conflict resolution at my university, and I've learned that the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought in the hearts of leaders who have to choose between what they've always done and what they know is right. You've built an empire on conquest, but empires built on fear eventually crumble. Friendships built on mutual respect last forever. The young human smiled gently. Whatever you decide, remember that you're not just a military commander. You're a person with hopes and dreams, and the capacity to choose kindness over cruelty. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing anyone can do. War Prime Klondar slammed his fist on the table. Psychological manipulation. They're trying to make us weak. But Veltar was studying the faces of his council members. Many of them looked thoughtful, even moved by the human's words. These were beings who had spent their entire lives following orders, conquering worlds, and expanding the hegemony's territory. The idea that there might be another way forward was both terrifying and liberating. "Vote," Veltar said quietly, and the chamber fell silent. One by one, the species representatives cast their decisions. The Krexani voted for invasion, as did the Thalmaran Empire and the Zephyr Confederation. But the Morzanite Collective voted for negotiation, along with the Crystal Singers and 3 other species. When the counting was finished, the result was unprecedented in hegemony history. 7 species for invasion, 5 for negotiation. As fleet commander, the final decision rested with Veltar. He looked at the blue planet on his screen, thinking about coffee break discoveries and children's drawings of peaceful aliens. He thought about 47 conquered worlds and the loneliness of command that the young human had somehow understood. For the first time in his military career, Fleet Commander Veltar was about to break 10,000 years of hegemony tradition. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "We're going to try something new." The order that Fleet Commander Veltar gave next would be remembered throughout the galaxy for thousands of years to come. Instead of commanding his ships to attack positions, he spoke words that had never been uttered in the history of hegemony warfare. All vessels assume peaceful orbit around the target world. Weapon systems to standby mode. Prepare for diplomatic contact. The bridge crew stared at him in stunned silence. War Prime Klondar's face turned 3 different shades of purple, but before he could voice his objections, Communications Officer Rixa raised her hand urgently. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet's surface. It's from Dr. Kim Jiho again." "Put it through," Veltar said, his voice steadier than he felt. Jiho's familiar voice filled the bridge, but this time he sounded excited rather than casual. "Commander Veltar, I've been monitoring the changes in your fleet's energy signatures. It looks like you've powered down your weapon systems. That's incredible. I wasn't sure if my message would reach you, or if you'd even listen," the Khachi human scientist paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was filled with genuine warmth. "Welcome to our solar system. I know this must be a difficult decision for you. Would you like to meet somewhere neutral? We've been preparing a small space station just outside Earth's atmosphere. Nothing fancy, but it's got coffee and decent Wi-Fi." Several alien officers blinked in confusion at the reference to coffee and Wi-Fi, but Veltar found himself almost smiling. Even in this historic moment, the humans remained charmingly casual about everything. "Sir," Lieutenant Zixara whispered, "are we really going to meet with them?" Veltar looked around at his crew, seeing a mixture of fear, excitement, and curiosity in their faces. After 47 conquests, none of them knew how to handle a peaceful first contact. But perhaps that was exactly why they needed to try. "Yes," he said firmly, "prepare a diplomatic shuttle, small crew only, and someone figure out what this coffee substance is that they keep mentioning." 2 hours later, Fleet Commander Veltar found himself materializing on a hastily constructed space station that orbited Earth like a tiny metal moon. He had expected to meet military leaders, government officials, or at least some kind of formal diplomatic corps. Instead, he found Dr. Kim Jiho waiting for him with a warm smile and what appeared to be a thermal container filled with some kind of hot beverage. "You look tired," Jiho said, as if he was greeting an old friend rather than an alien commander who had arrived with 50,000 warships. "Long journey from wherever you came from, I bet. Coffee?" Veltar, who had conquered worlds and faced down the most fearsome warriors in the galaxy, found himself completely unprepared for such casual hospitality. Coffee would be acceptable." Behind Jiho stood a small group of humans that defied every expectation Veltar had about first contact protocols. There was Professor Yun Hieri, the woman whose lectures had so accurately predicted alien psychology. Next to her stood Choi Nari, the art student whose sketches had somehow captured the appearance of species she'd never seen. A young man named Oh Sung-ho carried a worn notebook and had the calm demeanor of someone comfortable with big questions about existence and morality. "We brought some of our best people," Ji-ho explained, gesturing to his companions. "Though, honestly, we're all just excited to meet you. We've been wondering about life on other worlds for so long. Do you prefer your coffee black, or would you like some sugar?" As absurd as it seemed, Veltar found himself discussing beverage preferences with beings he had planned to conquer just hours earlier. The humans showed no fear, no suspicion, no attempts to assert dominance or negotiate from positions of strength. They were simply curious. "Tell us about your worlds," Professor Yoon asked, settling into a chair across from him. "What are your people like? What do you create when you're not traveling through space?" For the first time in centuries, someone was asking Veltar about his civilization's culture, rather than their military capabilities. He found himself describing the crystal gardens of Morzen Prime, the floating cities of Thexel 7, and the magnificent libraries, where 12 different species shared their knowledge and histories. "That sounds beautiful," Choi Nari said, already sketching in her notebook. "Would you mind if I drew some of these places? I've always believed that art can help people understand each other better." As the hours passed, something remarkable began happening. More humans arrived at the station, each bringing their own expertise and enthusiasm. Dr. Park Sunmi came with her matter transmission theories, eager to compare notes with hegemony scientists. A young engineer named Lee Junwook brought blueprints for improvements to their space station design, freely offering them to alien visitors who could have easily taken them by force. But what truly amazed Veltar was how quickly the barriers between species began to dissolve. Within 6 hours, human researchers were working alongside hegemony scientists, sharing discoveries as if they had been colleagues for years. The humans asked endless questions, but not about military secrets or technological advantages. They wanted to know about alien music, food, family structures, and dreams for the future. "Your species is remarkable," Veltar told Dr. Kim Ji-ho as they watched their respective teams collaborate in the station's main laboratory. "We're just curious," Ji-ho replied, then paused thoughtfully. "You know, we've spent our entire history wondering if we were alone in the universe. Finding out we're not, it's honestly the best thing that's ever happened to us." He looked out through the station's viewing window at the massive alien fleet surrounding Earth. "I hope you'll stay for a while. We have so much to learn from each other." 3 months later, the transformation was complete. The hegemony fleet had evolved from an invasion force into humanity's first interstellar embassy. Human students traveled to alien ships to study advanced sciences, while alien scholars descended to Earth's universities to learn about human creativity and collaborative problem-solving. The change rippled throughout the galaxy. Other species, hearing about the peaceful resolution at Earth, began questioning whether conquest was truly the only path to progress. Some worlds that had been scheduled for invasion were instead invited to join voluntary research partnerships. The age of fear-based expansion was ending, replaced by something the galaxy had never seen before: genuine cooperation between species who chose to work together rather than being forced to submit. And it had all started with a simple message sent during a coffee break in Seoul by a scientist who believed that knowledge was meant to be shared rather than hoarded. Fleet Commander Veltar, now serving as the first interspecies cultural exchange coordinator, often reflected on how wrong they had been about Earth. They hadn't come to conquer a primitive world. They had come to find the teachers their civilization had been searching for all along. The humans had shown them something more powerful than any weapon: the strength that comes from choosing trust over fear, cooperation over conquest, and friendship over domination. The galaxy would never be the same.